Hi and welcome everyone. We're just going to wait a moment as people enter the webinar. So we'll just be one more minute.
Hi, Mom. Oh, wait, not me.
All right, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today to hear from our teams. We'd love to know who's joining us and where you're joining us from, so please use the chat box to enter your name and location. My name is Alicia Inkowska, and I'm the development coordinator here at Christian Peacemaker Teams. I know there might be some of you on here that don't know much about us, so I'm just going to give a brief overview. CPT, or Christian Peacemaker Teams, is an organization that trains everyday people to work in local peacemaking communities that are confronting situations of lethal conflict, partnering with them to transform violence and oppression. And if you'd like to find out more about our work, you can go to cpt.org. And I'll be pasting some links in that chat box in a moment. Just to also let you know that we are going to be dedicating a good portion of this call to answering your questions. So at the bottom of your screen, you have a Q&A box. If you'd like to put in any questions you have in there, and we'll get to them after our team updates. And also, if we don't get to them during this webinar, we will be answering them afterwards. So first, I would like to get started with Mohammed, who will be providing updates from the Iraqi Kurdistan team. Thank you, Mohammed.
Hello, everyone. Mohammed Salah is with you from Iraqi Kurdistan. I am a Kurdish. I'm living in a city, it's called Slemani. IKteam is also based in Slemani. I'm a part-time CPTer. I met CPT in 2007. So our team is working in two different areas of work. Our work is, we would like to, or before I talk about our work, I would like also to introduce my team. So right now, 3 local team members are here in Iraqi Kurdistan. We are working, and the rest of our team members are working remotely back there, back home in their countries. And about our team, or the area of work of our team. So one of them is we call it as accompaniment of civil society, such as civil society activists, local civil society organizations, human rights defenders, journalists, and any other minority groups who are peacefully and non-violently are seeking for their rights. So CPT is trying to accompany these people in Iraqi Kurdistan. So also, like recently, or actually today, me and one of my teammates, Runak, we accompanied, or we attended a demonstration held here in city of Suleimani, because right now, due to the financial issues happening in all over Iraq, and especially in Iraqi Kurdistan, so governmental employers and those who are working for governments are facing or having troubles for getting their payment or their salaries. So they are organizing a protest, asking the government to pay for their salaries, which is it is very big issue right now happening. Like governmental employees are not receiving any money for 2020. Like imagine that you are a nurse or a doctor and you are not received your salary for 4 months. So CPT is trying to, we were there as an international observer, and to cover what's going on there. And also part of the accompaniment, we also provide a non-armed protective accompaniment for those civil society activists who are facing death or threatening or torturing or arresting. So CPT is trying to be with those activists and people who are facing those types of threats from the security forces, from the government, from any other people who are having power. The second area of our work is the border bombing, which is we are trying, we accompany, we partner with communities, with families who are facing border bombing or bombing by Turkey and Iran. Those families who are living across the border or in the border with Iran and Turkey, and these families are facing these types of threats, bombardment, and a lot of violence going on this border. So CPT is trying to partnership with those families and try, and we advocate for the right. We want them to not feel they're alone. There is CPT here try to work with them and to advocate for their rights, to accompany them and try to do what our partners are hoping, which is try to end the border bombing, which is try to the Iraq and the KRG to provide safety for those people who are facing those kind of threats. Thousands of villagers are living in those areas, and they are facing this kind of threats. Like it's very hard. Like there are families who are completely vanished. There are families, their car being bombed by Turkish drones, and it is a tragedy happening there. And like there is no like international media who cover this, who talk about this. So CPT is trying to amplify the voices of these people. CPT is trying to accompany with them and go with them to meet with officials and ask for their rights and demand for their rights. So many people are lost their beloved one. And this is like a good opportunity actually to invite you all. That's next week. Our team has another webinar on May 14th, which is, we will talk more in details about that issue. And also, I think it's a good opportunity to invite you to come to Kurdistan and to join one of our delegations, so I could be able to see you and meet my amazing team. Yeah, back to you, Alicia.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Now we're going to hear from Julian and the Palestine team.
Hello, everybody. Marhaba. It's good evening here. So my name is Julian. I'm a full-time member with CPT Palestine. I'm currently joining you from Amman, Jordan. However, we also have members elsewhere. Our project support coordinator, Mona, is in Ramallah. Tartil's in Hebron, and then Rachel and Yusuf are in the US. So just really quickly, if you're not familiar, CPT Palestine started in 1995 after the Ibrahimi Mosque massacre. We were invited by the Hebron municipality. If you're not familiar with the Ibrahimi Mosque massacre, it's when a settler went inside the mosque during prayer and killed over 30 people, injured over 150. So in our work, very quickly, our foundation is really establishing authentic relationships with community members on the ground. And then you can kind of break our work down into 4 different aspects. The first one is accompaniment, which Mohammed kind of touched on with his team in Kurdistan. So for us, accompaniment might mean walking with accompanying school children, community members during harvest, any nonviolent action that the community asks us, basically any anything that the community asks, we'll try to reciprocate and go from there. The other two are monitoring and documentation. So for example, in the mornings, we'll monitor certain checkpoints that are access to education for school children, but we'll also document or monitor violations of access to education, demolitions, arrests, detention, settler violence, any restriction of movement, or any of emergencies from the community themselves. We'll get phone calls from time to time. And the last piece is reporting and advocacy. So we try to take all of that information that we've gathered and create data that we'll share with other partners, other organizations such as UNICEF or other international partners. And we're really trying to amplify voices from the community and advocate and support them in any way that we can. So with advocacy, that might mean, you know, sharing stuff on social media. So please follow us on Facebook or Instagram, and sharing that reporting, sharing videos, photography, or any media campaigns, any campaigns from the local community. We really try to tap into that and advocate and amplify voices. So what we're doing right now, despite the craziness in the world, is we're really trying to focusing in on the reporting and advocacy. So at the moment, we still have weekly team meetings, and we really make an emphasis to stay in touch with our partners on the ground and keep up to date on what's happening, because there's been a massive decrease in international presence. So we want to make sure that we're in touch with them and ask them what are ways that we can support you. And most of the time it's, hey, can you share this information? Can you report this information? So we're still trying to write articles. We're still trying to share stuff on our social media. We're still trying to tap into our other networks, such as the education cluster with UNICEF. Me personally, I had a webinar with B'Tselem, who does a lot on settler violence. So we're constantly trying to tap into this and advocate. So just really quickly, on an update on what's happening on the ground. So unfortunately, there's been a large increase in settler activity and violence. Despite the measurements, settlers and military have broken measurements of lockdown, and we've seen an increase in settler violence, whether it's uprooting trees, invading homes, physical harm, all types of things like that. And in Hebron specifically, according to our partners, there's been at least 17 incidents of settlers breaking into land, burning olive trees, invading personal property, physical harm, and that's with the breakdown. So in Palestine at the moment, it's restricted access. You can't even travel from city to city, and most of the international community is left, and you know, going outside and things like that. And so that increase is just, imagine all the things that are not being reported on and not being documented. And lastly, or two last things, one of our partners, Human Rights Defenders, they've very recently had their home invaded, and they had some damage done to their home, and they had their Palestinian flag taken down, and this happened really recently. And last thing, if you're familiar with Hebron, you'll know that the IKteam Mosque is a huge, it's very meaningful to all the Abrahamic religions, but in Hebron specifically. And there's been, the Israeli state is looking to take full control from the Jordanian government. And at the moment, it's divided for Israelis and Palestinians, and they're looking to take full control. And they have plans to construct new facilities, which means taking more land and probably more than likely increasing the military presence. But I'll be more than happy to answer any questions during the Q&A.
Thank you, Julian. Now we're going to hear from Rachelle and the Turtle Island Solidarity Network. Over to you, Rachelle.
Hello, and thank you for organizing this. It's a great opportunity for us to share our work. I'm Rachelle Friesen, and I'm representing the Turtle Island Solidarity Network. We're not a full-time team. Instead, we are a network of reservists and CPTers across Turtle Island that are working at decolonization and standing in solidarity with Indigenous people. So I'm a settler. I'm currently in Toronto, which is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. And I just want to highlight a little bit about what's happening here on Northern Turtle Island, or also known as Canada. During COVID-19, mining has been considered essential work. And oftentimes mining, pipeline development is put near Indigenous communities. And so back in February and March, CPT had two delegations of CPTers standing in solidarity with the land defenders in Wet'suwet'en territory in northern BC, who were trying to protect their land from a pipeline being built and also from the government taking control of their land. Now, the land defenders are still there. However, the vast solidarity of visitors has obviously slowed down due to the restrictions of COVID-19. However, the workers of Coastal GasLink are still working because their work is considered essential. Now, after talking to Jen Wickham this past week, we were told that these workers aren't taking the necessary precautions to wear protective gear. And so there's a lot of fear about the spread of COVID-19 to Wet'suwet'en territory. And there's a lot of frustration because land defenders are at more limited capacity to stop the workers from violating their rights and their land title. And I think more about this fear, for example, in the Dene community of Lalache in northern Saskatchewan, they are experiencing a mass outbreak right now of COVID-19. And that's actually a result of a worker from the oil sands in Alberta coming back to the community, which is causing this mass outbreak. And it's important to remember that Indigenous communities across Turtle Island are often in very isolated areas. And so having access to urgent and critical health care is very, very limiting. In addition, there is mass inadequate housing in a lot of Indigenous communities and overcrowding in Indigenous communities, as well as many communities don't have access to clean drinking water, which means now at a time when physical distancing and washing your hands is really important, these communities are at a huge disadvantage and there's a lot of fear. So then I think about what our partners are doing, like the community of Grassy Narrows that we've been in partnership for the last 20 years. They're restricting access to visitors because that fear is so strong. And they're about an hour and a half away from any sort of major grocery stores or from critical care centers. So what is CPT doing in this time? Part of the Turtle Island Solidarity Network's mandate is to work at education and settler education for the purpose of decolonization. And so within the past week, we've held 2 webinars within CPT. Last week, we had a webinar entitled Palestine to Turtle Island, Understanding Settler Colonialism. And 2 days ago, all my days are starting to run together. 2 days ago, we hosted another webinar called Stories from the Front Line of Wet'suwet'en Resistance. And so we really want to encourage all you folks to check into those webinars to hear about what has been happening across Turtle Island. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachelle. All right, so we're going to move on to the Colombia team and we're going to hear from Naty and Pierre, and Pierre will also be providing translation. Thank you. You're muted, Pierre.
Sorry about that. Okay. So my name is Pierre Chance. I'm from Canada and a full-time member of the Colombia team.
Hola a todos y todas, soy soy Natalia, también miembro de tiempo completo de Colombia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natalia, and I'm also a full-time member of the team here in Colombia. We also have John Henry and Marcela, who are, all four of us are here in Barranca. Naty and Marcela and I live, we are very close here to the office, so we're coming to work here even though we're in confinement. All of Colombia is under lockdown. We cannot travel between cities, and even within the city, we're allowed 1 day a week to leave our homes to do grocery shopping, essential things. So we'll just give you a quick brief overview of the Colombia history, of the team history, and then some of the work. So Colombia, we've been here in Colombia since 2001. We established the program here in the Middle Magdalena region. It's a region that is extremely wealthy in resources such as gold, coal, oil, land, and it's also a corridor. It's an important corridor, as its name says, it's in the middle of the country along the Magdalena River, which is Colombia's largest river, which flows from south to north. Because it is an important strategic territory, it has the presence of all armed groups, either insurgent guerrilla groups, right-wing paramilitary death squads, the official Colombian army, and drug cartels. And they're all looking to control territory and resources. But who's behind all of this? It's basically large landowners and companies who are wanting to take over the land and resources. And they're using everything at their means, which is either armed groups for armed violence against people, or they're using corruption and unfair laws to take over land and resources. What is our basic work? Well, we call it the 3 Ps, physical, pastoral, and political accompaniment. And it's already been talked a little bit about by different teams. The physical accompaniment, well, that's being physically present in the communities that we accompany, our partner communities, or with the human rights defenders, partners. And that's telling the violent actors that our partners are not alone. They commit an act of violence, that we will denounce it to the world and to everyone. Pastoral accompaniment, that's telling our partners that they are not alone. When you have the threat of eviction from your land or a threat to your life, that can weigh heavy on you, and you can feel discouraged at continuing your work. Well, telling our partners that they are not alone, that we will walk with them, and that we will be with them on this journey, that gives them encouragement to continue their work. And the political, well, that's doing political advocacy, telling the world through these webinars, holding authorities to accountability, to support the communities in their struggle. Who are our partners? Well, we accompany both rural communities in their struggle for territorial and land defense. Caucopana is an organization that works in the Northeast Antioquia region with small farmers and miners, and the rural farming and fishing communities of Las Palas, Guayabo, Bella Unión, and Garzal, Nueva Esperanza. But we also accompany 2 urban-based human rights organizations. One is CREDOS, the regional corporation for the defense of human rights, and the OFP, the Popular Women's Organization. And these organizations do provide psychosocial, legal, humanitarian aid, and economic projects to vulnerable populations. So now Naty is going to give you a bit of the current context.
Gracias, Pierre. Después de esta breve parte de la historia, también queremos actualizarlos sobre lo que está pasando en las comunidades y organizaciones que acompañamos.
So after a brief history, we want to update you on what's happening with our partner communities and organizations.
El COVID-19 ha visibilizado realidades que han existido en Colombia desde siempre.
So what COVID-19 has done has made visible realities that have existed in Colombia for a long time.
Es decir, lo que el pueblo ha venido exigiendo a través de los años es cierto.
It's basically saying what the people have been demanding throughout the years is true.
Vemos con preocupación que las comunidades campesinas que acompañamos no tienen centros de salud dignos para ser atendidos.
And so we're very concerned that the communities, the farming communities that we accompany, don't have health centers where they can go be cared for.
Afortunadamente no hay casos de COVID aún, pero de llegarse a presentar sería un problema sanitario muy grave.
So fortunately, there are no cases. There are no COVID cases out there. But if there were to be a case, it would be a health crisis.
Los niños y las niñas en este momento no tienen cómo acceder a la escuela, ya que las clases están siendo virtuales.
Children now don't have a way to access school because now it's all being done online.
Y en la comunidad el acceso a internet es muy difícil y ninguno de ellos tiene un computador para estudiar.
In the rural communities, access to internet is very difficult and none of the children have a computer to work on.
Esto es como negarle a estos niños y niñas el derecho a la educación.
This is denying children the right to education.
Las áreas rurales están muy vulnerables en estos momentos.
The rural areas are very vulnerable right now.
Por el cierre de los medios de transporte, no han podido comercializar sus productos y muchas veces tienen que prescindir de ellos.
Because of the closure of all transportation, they have not been able to get their products to market. And many times they've had to dump their produce.
También vemos con preocupación la militarización de estas zonas veredales.
And we're also very concerned about the militarization of these rural communities.
Que no garantizan seguridad, sino que por el contrario generan temor.
Because on the contrary, bringing security, it's generating a lot of fear.
Por otro lado, las cifras de agresiones y violencias de género han venido en aumento desde el confinamiento.
And also the numbers of gender-based violence are on the rise.
Estamos trabajando de la mano de la Organización Femenina Popular para dar seguimiento a estas situaciones.
And we're working with the Popular Women's Organization to follow up on these cases.
El gobierno no quiere reconocer estas crisis.
The government basically doesn't want to recognize these crises that the people have been naming for years.
Es por eso que como IKteam Colombia queremos reinventar nuevas formas de seguir acompañando las comunidades y las organizaciones.
And this is why CPT Colombia, we're trying to find new ways to continue accompanying the communities and our partner organizations.
Estamos elaborando campañas de concientización sobre estas realidades.
We're developing campaigns to raise awareness about these new realities.
Nuevas estrategias de conectarnos con las comunidades ahora que debemos permanecer en casa.
New strategies to communicate with our communities and partners now that we have to stay at home.
El trabajo continúa con mucha más fuerza, ilusión y con la gratitud de saber que contamos con cada uno y una de ustedes.
But our work continues with a lot of strength and gratitude, knowing that we can count on each one of you for your support.
Su apoyo económico y sus oraciones son muy importantes para nosotros.
Your donations and your prayer support is extremely important to us.
Muchas gracias por su tiempo y por escucharnos.
Thank you for listening to us and for your time.
Mucha paz desde Colombia.
Much peace from Colombia.
Thank you so much, Naty and Pierre. We're going to move to our final team, the Aegean Migrant Solidarity Program, which is based in Lesvos, and we're going to have Nagehan sharing for us. Thank you.
Hello everybody. Sorry, I had a technical problem and that's why I was a little bit stressed to be connected, but finally I'm here. And yes, we are here in the island and we had some very difficult days lastly before the quarantine started. There was a lot of racist attacks in the island, especially to the migrants, activists and NGO workers, very seriously targeted, all of them. And after, since 23rd of March, we are like in quarantine and Moria camp is also locked down. And for people who are, for the residents of Moria camp, everything was very difficult during this period to reach very basic needs like water or soap, very, very basic hygienic needs was impossible to reach. And also some other issues, for example, they have 90 euro in a month from UN. This was their monthly salary, let's say, but it was not possible for them even to take this money So they were not able to buy something when they are not able to go out of the camp. And now they are trying to build a new bancomat inside of the camp, and somehow this coronavirus issue was an excuse to transform the camp a little bit to closed version. Maybe it will be developed in this way, and we are very sorry for this. It was very difficult for us to reach our friends who are there and to bring our support, but we tried to be active in this period. Especially there were a lot of protests, migrants self-organized by migrants in this period, and we as Aegean Migrant Solidarity, we followed these protests, and we updated everybody about what is happening, about their demands and their needs. And we have a blog together with an assembly of Moria, people with or without papers. We are a group of activists and migrants who try to give visibility to this kind of protests also, which is not only, okay, there are migrants, but they are not only victims, they also have their self-expression, and they are not only silent. And we want to contribute to give more visibility to these things. Also, another very sad thing was that inside the Moria camp there is a prison. It's a kind of detention center of people mostly to be deported. So they are not at all criminals, but they are criminalized. They somehow, a lot of people doesn't even know why they are there. And during this period, their situation was even worse. And a hunger strike started there, and really few people was aware of this and about their demands. They are closed in a closed camp, and they have really nothing. And their hunger strike were blocked with a very big police harassment, unfortunately. Unfortunately, yeah, I'm happy that they are eating now, but their demands and problems are still existing, and nothing has changed in this period. And we were always in contact, and we are still in contact with our friends in prison. And we are hearing and trying to give our support. Apart from this, because the borders are closed now, there is no deportation since 2 months, no deportation, which we are also following. And we are working with LGBTQ group here, with LGBTQ migrants who are here. And yeah, this is an ongoing work. We used to have weekly meetings, and we are giving support of like lawyer, medical, and this kind of support we are offering. We are like a collective, and everybody is supporting each other. But these times we couldn't have possibility to meet physically, but virtually. It was also very interesting because we used to have this kind of meetings with people very far away, but now in a little island we were having online meetings with people in Moria in their tents. But we continued to have, we never stopped to have these meetings. And we found a media group now, and to express their feelings in this period as a LGBT migrant, we looked for different ways. We are now on the way of making a short film, and some international media were interested about their situation, and we made connection with them. For example, 2 days ago, they were in a German radio to speak about this condition, and we wrote a text together which will be published in a local magazine, and we made some drawings. So it's virtual, but we were always active with that. And a new thing for Aegean Migrant Solidarity, this is a new door that it's opened, that we are also in collaboration with a women group This was women's space was a part of a bigger school, One Happy Family, which was 2 months ago burned after a racist attack. So the school is destroyed now. But women's space continue its activities in an independent way, in a really, really difficult and limited resources. And we started to be part of their activities, always with media meetings. So for 1 month, we meet periodically, this time physically also, which was not very legal, but somehow they were able to come to center with the cars of friends. And we were in a little room to make a film, a short film, which will be the start of a series of other films. Now we are editing this film. Lockdown is not existing anymore here in the island, so we can go. Moria is still have the lockdown, but for not Moria residents, we can freely go out. So now we are in the editing phase of this film, which is very great and very feminist and very activist and giving very enthusiasm to everybody who sees. I hope to be able to share also with CPT very soon. Yes, these are my updates, what we are doing. I want to cut short. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Nagehan. All right, we're going to turn to questions now. And I'm going to just read out one of our first questions, which is for Mohammed in the IKteam. It's a little bit of a two-part question. Firstly, how is the team managing to meet these days? And the second one is about the response of the Kurdish regional government and the Iraqi central government to CPT's work. How do they respond to CPT's work? Thanks, Mohammed.
Thank you. So actually now the lockdown, the restrictions of lockdown is kind of much easier than before. Like people in general are moving around. And right now, as I mentioned, like we are 3 local team members right now in Iraqi Kurdistan. And today I met Runak and we participated or we observed that the demonstration. So actually, we meet each other, but until now, we are not meeting in the office. So each of us still are in their own house and we are communicating on internet or cell phones and we are doing our work. So this is how we meet and try to manage our work. The response of the KRG and the Iraqi central government to, I think you said to the CPT work?
Yes, CPT work.
So it's depend actually, and it's depend who we are meeting of those officials. Like there are some officials, for example, parliamentarian, we have met with them, with our partners, and some of them, or actually I could say most of them are very supportive to the demands of our partners, and they always promise and try to do their work, like to bring the issue into the parliament to discuss about the rights of those villagers. And again, like it is CPT and our partners, our ambition is to meet with those people who are really have power, who can make a decision. And that is the process that still is working on it. And CPT, we are trying to be able to meet with those people. And in general, their response is good. And they really do have a respect to the CPT work and our partners.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Okay, our next question will be for Julian. And folks would like to know how the coronavirus is affecting the occupation.
Thank you. Yeah, so in early March, the West Bank went under complete lockdown. And so schools were locked down, the mosque, no one could access, it was very limited access to the Ibrahimi Mosque. and then all internationals were asked to leave. So as a team, it was while we were there, we really couldn't do some of our normal activities like going outside, going through the checkpoints because all restriction. But Corona in general, we've kind of mentioned it in the introduction. We've seen the settlers and the Israeli military take advantage of Corona, and settlers have not been following any lockdown restrictions or anything like that. You know, the access to, you know, the restriction of movement, which was already a problem, and all the other is even more of a problem now. But it's not for the settlers. And so also economically speaking, you know, with the travel from city to city, a lot of the supply chains for Palestinians are also very, very limited. So at the moment, it's, you know, very difficult because, you know, all the focus and media attention is everywhere else. And so even though there's this large increase in settler violence and settler activities, not to mention, I'm sure as you have all seen in the news with, you know, the Trump peace plan or whatever, and annexations of certain parts of in Hebron and in the West Bank, settlers have been using this as a means to increase their methods of violence, to attain more land. And because of the, you know, the state of the world, none of this is getting reported in international news. That, you know, since all internationals were asked to leave, there's a very small international presence. So Corona has been used by the settlers and the Israeli states to confiscate more land. We in B'Tselem said that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of olive trees that have been burned in farmland. And you know, because of restrictions, you know, sometimes Palestinian farmers might not know until a day or 2 days later. So yeah, we've really seen Corona really, you know, been taken advantage of, and a high increase in human rights violations, in short.
Thank you, Julian. And Rachelle, we have a question. Someone said that they attended the Wet'suwet'en webinar on Tuesday, which you can find a link to in the chat box, and I'll repaste that. But can you please remind them of ways they can get involved in being in solidarity with Indigenous people?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So actually later today at 12 p.m. Pacific time, there's actually, if you go to CPT Turtle Island Solidarity Network's Facebook page, there's actually going to be an online rally in support of Wet'suwet'en. So trying to find local actions and where you can get in solidarity with people becomes really, really important. And something that's really cool about this network is we are covering all of Turtle Island. So a few months ago, when we were attending physical rallies rather than online rallies, we had folks attending rallies in Philadelphia, in York, and then across Canada as well. Another thing that's super important, at least for myself, in my learning process as a settler, is to take time to learn about the history of the land that I am on, and try and see what's happening in my community to decolonize this land. So again, we're trying to post documentaries that folks can watch during this time of physical distancing on our Facebook page. So it is twofold: participate when you hear actions happening, and also really take time to learn about your own identity and the history of what's taking place on this land.
Thank you so much, Rachelle. Now we're going to turn to Pierre and Naty. And we have a question about how the lockdown has affected human rights defenders specifically.
So one of the situations in Colombia is that historically, anyone who speaks out in the defense of human rights has often received death threats or has been assassinated. Colombia has one of the highest rates of assassination of human rights defenders and activists. The confinement, one of the ways to protect themselves is that they will move around a lot. They will often not sleep in the same place 2 nights in a row. And confinement has made that incredibly difficult. Now they cannot move around so much. And so the violent actors are able to track them down and locate them a lot easier. And since it's been a month now that we've been in lockdown, 23 or 24 human rights activists have been assassinated. But already just in this past year, it's much higher, that number of activists that have been assassinated. And so there's been a very large cry out. The UN has put out a report on this, and the government simply does not respond. The government is not providing the means to protect human rights defenders. They'll sometimes provide them with bodyguards, with armored vehicles, with bulletproof vests, with a cell phone. But this doesn't change the political environment in which violent actors feel they can commit these assassinations with impunity, because the prosecution, the percentage of violent actors that are prosecuted and convicted for the assassination of human rights defenders is very low. It's almost with total impunity. And so until that changes, until the political environment changes to protect human rights people, the workers, that will not change. And so the confinement, what that has done, like I said before, it's forced human rights defenders to stay in place. And that is one of the riskiest things that they can do.
Thank you so much, Naty and Pierre. Okay, we've got a question for Nagehan. Someone would like to know, are there still migrants arriving to Lesbos despite the lockdown, and what happens when they do arrive?
So the last 35 days, there were no arrivals. First time 2 days ago, 51 people came again. But the bad thing is that the last arrivals, like the end of March, there were like 100 people. They were in the north of the island, and they were not accepted to Moria because of Corona and because of the quarantine. But that we know that 14 days is the period of quarantine. But for them, it was an unknown time. For more than 1 month, they were in the beaches without any source, anything, any food, and without tents. And people who were trying to help them were targeted very badly. And they really lived in a bad condition, very bad condition, dramatically bad condition, under the rain, but I don't want to give more details. Only last week they were accepted to Moria camp after 1 month and a half of this condition. And the new arrivals now, they are in a little town, Kalolimani, 51 people, and now we don't know how long they will stay. They are in quarantine outside. Today they were accepted, and people accepted to help with the tents. So they will give them tents. At least we know that these people will have tents. But from the other side, some people started to be transferred to Athens. First, they told that 1,500 people will be transferred. Now they started with 400 people. And also some countries accepted some minors, like around 50 minors, unaccompanied minors are transferred also to Germany, Luxembourg, Belgium. Some countries just shared yes, let's see. We hope that they can be more supportive. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nagehan. And we're going to go back to Mohammed. And we have a question about what is the villagers and IK people's relationship with the PKK?
So this is like the situation in the border. It is really kind of like for the villagers, it's they have to leave because it's their land and they need to live on their lands. It's their homeland. It's their home countries, and they're facing these kind of situations because they are civilians and there are two parties who are in a conflict, and it is hard for them to really live in that situation, which is knowing that they are facing these kind of violence because of their conflicts. And the relationship is like they want to live in their lives, in their villages, and they don't want to be involved to any other conflicts between those parties. So that is why they want to really have independent life there and to not be part of those conflicts. And they really want to not have to be part of any of those conflicts and to not take sides of any of those parties, and trying to be neutral there.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Okay, we have a question again for the Colombia team. So this one asks, so we were very happy to hear about the peace treaty that ended the civil war, but we were disappointed when it was voted down. What are the prospects for a renewed peace process?
Bueno, es una pregunta muy difícil.
It's a very difficult question.
Sí, fue muy triste para nosotros cuando ganó el no.
It was very sad for us when the no won.
Digamos que hay cierto grupo de colombianos o personas que seguimos creyendo en que la paz es posible.
So there are those of us Colombians who believe that peace is still possible.
Pero una paz que vaya mucho más allá de solo ausencia de guerra.
But it's a peace that goes much further than just the absence of war.
Sino una paz que tenga justicia social.
It's a peace that is based in social justice.
En estos momentos, las condiciones en que estamos y el gobierno que está actualmente en la presidencia.
But the current context in which we are and the current government that we have,
creemos que es mucho más difícil que podamos llegar a acuerdos porque desde que hubo el cambio de gobierno, todo cayó, todo se vino para abajo y por el contrario, esa ilusión que teníamos de creer en la paz bajó circunstancialmente.
Yeah, with the current government, since there was the change of government, everything, all the illusion of possibility of peace ended, because now with this government, they've turned back a lot of the things that were agreed upon. And so under the current circumstances, it would be very difficult to reach any type of peaceful agreement.
Sí, y podemos ver esto reflejado en ese abandono estatal en las comunidades que acompañamos.
And we can see this through abandonment of the state in the communities that we accompany.
Donde, por ejemplo, en Las Pavas, los niños tienen que ir a la escuela montados en un caballo por 2 horas.
And so, for example, in Las Pavas community, children have to go on a donkey ride for 2 hours to get to their school.
Entonces, la ilusión sigue, o sea, queremos creer en eso y que pueda ser posible, pero hay que cambiar muchas cosas y pues tratar de no rendirnos y que ojalá el gobierno, los gobernantes cambien su mente, abran sus ojos y no abran sus posibilidades a la paz.
And so we continue to have hope. We continue to believe that it is possible, but that means that those in power need to change their mindset and need to change the way things are done for peace to come.
Thank you so much, Naty and Pierre. Okay, we've got a general question here, which I'm going to ask Julian and then Nagehan to share on. It's about how are you holding up, how is morale holding up for the teams and our partners, and what practices have you found supportive to your spirits?
My first?
Yeah.
Speaking personally, I've been quite isolated for like 2 months. So I've been reading a lot of books, read like 40 books, and trying to learn as much Arabic as possible. As far as morale on the team, I think, we try our best to keep the jokes going, to, stay in touch with one another, because here in Jordan and in Palestine, I would say that the restrictions are quite stronger than maybe in other places. Like in Jordan specifically, while I've been here, I mean, there are weeks where you can leave the home, or there's a curfew and all these kinds of things. So I find, taking the time to become more informed, to read more books, and things like that. But as far as this, our partners on the ground, I think, with this increased settler activity, and with everything that's been happening this year, I think it's easy to be discouraged. With Corona, it's just really turned the spotlight away from our partners and the work and the things that they're going through as a result. So I think, what we try to do is stay in contact with our partners and, as I've mentioned previously, try our best to amplify their voices. So they, Pierre kind of touched on it, but finding a way to make sure that, we are, even though we're not all of us are present, but we are still, supporting, we're still finding ways to advocate. Yeah, I think, khalas, that's it.
So, about the morale of the team. So what we were living in the beginning of this year, to be honest, was very worse than what we are living now. So with a lot of racism and attacks, and this was more difficult for us, to be honest, than Corona, because in the island we had only 6 cases of coronavirus, and 5 of them were already healed, and now since 1 month we don't have any case, and somehow there are a lot of precautions, so it was very well controlled. So we didn't live so hard. Yes, it's very sad to know some things, what is happening in the world in general. But to be honest, all the racists were at their homes, so we also could work a little bit better in this period. I cannot say that we were super down. We worked, and yes, what I can say, yeah, personally, I try to write. This is my more balance, also psychological, spiritual balance is writing, and also to make aware, because there are no journalists left here, very, very few activists and NGO workers here, because a lot of them, they left after racist attacks, and some of them after quarantine. So we are really few people. So for me, it's something that give me also motivation. It's write about this and make aware someone. This was a good connection. So yeah, I can tell this.
Thank you so much, Nagehan. Okay, we've got about a minute left, so I'm going to start to wrap up. I've posted the links to our team Facebook pages in the chat box, so please do go and follow on Facebook. And we've also got a link to our new CPT action page too, and you can find out about past and upcoming webinars. We do have the Iraqi Kurdistan team presenting on May 14th at 12 p.m. CT time. So please do join that. We'll be sending out the invites for that shortly. If you do have any questions that come up after this webinar finishes, please do email peacemakers@cpt.org. I've also put that link in the chat box. And we will be responding to the Q&As that we didn't get to today. So expect an email from us in the coming days for that. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you're all doing well, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you to all.
Shukran jazilan. Muchas gracias.
Mohammed!